Good evening, guys, and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg, and we're shooting another evening video today because I came home from work this afternoon and there was a package waiting for me on the kitchen table. And it had a knife inside of it. And I'd really like to get this knife into the rotation as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to shoot a quick video to take a look at it while it's in brand new condition and give you my first impressions of it anyway. It is from Sanrenmu. It's sold under their land trademark, but those of you who aren't familiar with Sanrenmu, they are a Chinese manufacturer, and you're probably familiar with some of their knives because they are the primary Chinese contractor for a lot of Spyderco's made in China knives. Not the Bird series knives, but the Tenacious and the Persistence series, and some of Spyderco's little bug knives. So you may not ever have heard of Sanrenmu, but you've certainly seen some of their knives already. Anyway, this one's pretty amazing, especially considering the price I paid for it. So let's go over to the tabletop and take a quick look at it. I'll try to keep this fairly short. Alright guys, so here it is. For some of you, this will not be the first video review you've seen of this knife. What we're looking at today is the Sanrenmu, or Land. This is a new trademark that Sanrenmu is using. Model 912. You're probably, or you might be familiar with the Sanrenmu Model 7010 or 710, which is very similar to this knife. And is very similar to a much more famous knife, which we will talk about in just a moment. But it just came in this cardboard box. Very simple, straightforward cardboard box with a cardboard tray type insert. And there's the knife in a plastic bag. Now, some reviewers have chosen to sort of beat around the bush in talking about the design of this knife. But I think it's best probably to address the elephant in the room and admit that this knife is a clone of the Chris Reeve large Sebenza, which is probably the most award-winning single folding knife design in the world over the last 20 years or so. The only really major difference between this knife and the Sebenza series, or the only really immediately obvious difference, if you didn't know that this knife was made in China and cost a lot less, is the fact that the Chris Reeve Sebenza has a titanium frame, and it's a titanium frame lock. Otherwise, the design is extremely similar. This knife ends up being a little bit heavier on account of the stainless steel frame. I'm not the first person to review this, I'm not the first person to point this out, but I still was just blown away by the apparent quality of this knife. The machining is fantastic. The blade centering is perfect. There are no gaps, there are no spaces around screw heads, nothing is misaligned. The lanyard tube is anodized blue, which is very reminiscent of the Reeve knives that this knife knocks off. The thumb stud is also anodized blue. The blade profiling is just perfect. The secondary grind is just perfect. The lockup is, I don't know, about 50%. Without having worn in at all, just about perfect. Some folks have complained that the detent is a bit too strong on this, and it does have a strong detent. It's probably not going to open in your pocket, but it just flies open as if it were assisted, which it's not, and I didn't hardly give it any oomph there. It's not an assisted blade, but the detent and the bronze ball bearings, it has bronze washers with roller bearings in there, which allow it to open very smoothly. It is 12C27 Sandvik Swedish stainless steel, which is not surprising. Sanrenmu manufactures, as I've already mentioned, some of Spyderco's knives, and The Grasshopper, which is the largest in the Bug series, also features 12C 27 Sandvik steel. Another really nice little knife. But this is a slip joint. It's very small. It's legal pretty much anywhere, but it's not a really serious heavy-duty knife. And it costs about, it's not too expensive, but it's about 20 bucks or so. Here's another knife with which most of you are probably familiar, which Sanrenmu manufactures for Spyderco. It's the Tenacious G10 handle scales. This one's only using 8CR13 MOV, which is a very pedestrian Chinese steel with Spyderco's heat treatment, or I guess actually Sanrenmu's heat treatment. It performs very well. This is a very well respected knife, but it's about as basic as an actual Spyderco branded Spyderco knife comes. And this knife sells for about $35, right? This knife I picked up on GearBest for $12 on a flash sale prior to Christmas. Now, it did take about 3 weeks to get here. The Chris Reeve large Sebenza costs $450, and a lot of people are willing to spend that much. I have about, I don't know, $150 limit or so on what I'll pay for a good knife. I think this was about 120, the Benchmade Griptilian in D2. I think this was about 120 bucks. I paid $105 for my Spyderco Paramilitary 2, but that generally sells for about 120 bucks. And if I hadn't found a good deal on it, I probably would have paid $120 for it. I'll spend up to $150 on a knife that I really like. $450's a little bit much for me. So I don't know that I would ever actually buy a real Chris Reeve Sebenza, although I'm absolutely sure they're totally worth the money if you're willing to spend that kind of money on a knife. But this thing at $12, I don't know. It just blows my mind. And this is not some flea market Chinese knife that was made by some mystery manufacturer. Sanrenmu is not well known in the United States. Certainly the Land brand doesn't carry a premium price tag, but they're making knives like this for probably one of the most reputable knife manufacturers in the country. Now, the fact that it does look like the Chris Reeve Sebenza presents a problem for some people. I've seen huge arguments and all kinds of name calling and everything else on some of the discussion forums and Facebook groups where people are just incensed and totally adamant that they would never buy an homage or a clone to anything else, and that we all have this moral imperative not to buy clone products. And I can't agree with that. I totally disagree with it, actually. As an end consumer, I think you do have a moral obligation not to buy outright counterfeits. But I also don't believe that it's my obligation as a consumer to protect the intellectual property of, Chris Reeve, or I wouldn't buy a counterfeit Spyderco, but I have bought knives with Spidey holes in them from companies like Ganzo, and there's a lot of guys who really are dead set against that. And if that's your feeling, then absolutely don't buy the product. But at $12, how could you not buy a knife like this? I mean, unless you just have too many knives, which I probably do, but that doesn't stop me from buying more when I get an opportunity to do so. And I do sell a lot of stuff on eBay. I don't know that I'll keep this knife forever, but I am going to start using this. I'm going to start carrying it tomorrow, see how the 12C 27 Sandvik holds up. I mean, I've used this blade steel in knives like the Frost Mora knives from Sweden, the Grasshopper here. Now, I haven't really done a whole lot of heavy-duty work with the grasshopper. I've just basically opened some letters and cut some string, but it seems to work pretty well. One of the nice things about 12C27 is it's not great with edge retention, but it's very easy to sharpen. I imagine the knife will hold up fairly well. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. All of the hardware looks to be very high quality. I bought this one from GearBest. I think they're also available from Fast Tech, Alibaba. You can buy them, I think, on eBay, maybe even through Amazon, but you're going to pay quite a bit more money. I think you're going to pay 2 or 3 times as much money for this same knife. But I don't really know that I have much else to say about it. I just wanted to take a quick look at it while it was still in brand new condition. I'm going to carry it tomorrow. I'm working outdoors, so I'm going to be putting it through its paces. If the blade breaks or it's not properly heat treated and that it loses its edge very quickly or whatever, I will certainly revisit that in a future video. I probably will do an actual review of this knife, or at least the knife will appear in upcoming videos where I'm contrasting and comparing things. All right, let's go back over to the bookshelves and wrap this up. So, the Sanrenmu, or Land 912, a larger brother to the earlier Sanrenmu 710 or 7010. They seem to like to change the model numbers fairly often. You just saw it. It looks like a great knife. The manufacturing standards are obviously there. 12C27 is a good steel. The only thing in question that we don't really know is what's the heat treatment like. But given Sanrenmu's credentials in manufacturing knives for Spyderco, I would expect it to perform perfectly well. I have several Spyderco knives that were manufactured by Sanrenmu. I have one other Sanrenmu branded knife which has been working perfectly well. So I expect that this one will do the same. Is it a blatant knockoff of the Chris Reeve large Sebenza? Yeah, of course it is. Some people don't want to come out and say that, but I'll come right out and say it. Is the Chris Reeve large Sebenza worth $450, however? Well, to me it's not. Given my sort of very proletarian, maybe $150 cutoff point for buying knives, I'm not paying $450 for a Chris Reeve Sebenza. I don't care what it's made out of. I know it's got S35 VN steel or whatever, and that's great. That's super. And to a lot of people, it would be worth $450. I mean, Chris Reeve is a big business, and they sell an awful lot of knives. But the real question here is the Sanrenmu or Land 912 worth $12? I would say one of those knives would be worth $12 several times over. If it were for sale in an American department store or Cabela's, something like that, I would expect it to sell for 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 times that amount of money. I don't know how the Chinese do it, how they could manufacture that knife, market it, sell it, ship it for $12. It's just absolutely insane, but it just doesn't seem conceivable to me that you could build a business model like that and be profitable, but clearly the Chinese are doing it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and click the like button down below. If you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more like it, consider subscribing to the channel. It takes a fraction of a second, it doesn't cost a dime, and it goes a long way to help keep us here on the air. If you're already a subscriber and you want to make sure that you don't miss any content, go ahead and click that little bell icon down below. That'll allow YouTube to send you notifications when we post new content to the channel. And when we do that, I hope to see each of you here at that time. Later, guys.